those are male things, right? They'll buy their sons the guns, their daughters the Barbie dolls, and so on. That's sort of the stereotypical parent. And the women just receive discouragement when they're young. When they do become engineers, when they join the workforce, they're regarded as strange. I just spoke at the Anita Borg conference for women about a month ago in Atlanta. There were 2,000 young women there. And I was interacting with them. It was great to be one of 10 men and 2,000 women. That's a different story. But, they were so delighted to be with each other, getting encouragement from each other, because when they were working, they weren't getting this kind of encouragement. They were, one gal amongst 50 guys, and the guys treated them differently and given them different responsibilities. So in businesses, they tend to get to a certain level, and then they get discouraged, and then they leave business, so they don't reach executive levels. There's a fundamental systematic problem which disadvantages half of our workforce, half of our population.
Vivek, before you leave this, who is Michael Arrington, and why did you make him upset?
Michael Arrington is the founder of TechCrunch. He's like quite a celebrity in Silicon Valley. When I sent that first email about where were the women at the Crunchies thing, he got very defensive, and he had Heather Hardy respond to me with data. I put him on the defensive. And the deal I have with TechCrunch is that they don't pay me anything. I mean, when I moved to Silicon Valley, I had no idea what TechCrunch was. Now I realize that it's off the charts. It's more red than Businessweek is by an order of magnitude, right?
But you had a big blow up with him.
I did, and what happened was that Mike got very upset at my first article, second article, third article, then he blew it, and then he says, don't blame me, it's not my fault. I mean, he just wrote such a defensive, nasty post about it. And then they had this other woman Penelope Trunk write a post about how she decided to be not, I mean, she was a tech CEO, she decided to leave the tech industry because she wanted to have babies. And the article was, women don't start tech companies because they want to have babies. Okay. I responded to that. The deal I have with him is that I can post whatever I wanted. And Mike has been very unhappy with this fire that I've lit, and with him being in the middle of this firestorm. So it's a contentious debate in Silicon Valley that I'm at the midst of. And I never thought that I'd be there's a defender of women. A year and a half ago, I didn't even, when I put, these slides are about a year old. When I put them together, I didn't even have a clue that there was an issue about women. You don't see women showing up here, because that's how I was. Now that I'm in the midst of this thing, I realize the problem. I realize how bad it is. And I've become quite a spokesperson for the women's groups. She got me started on the, question? I'm sorry.
Can you talk a little bit about failure? I know you had posted about how in Japan that was a big,
yeah.
I guess, non-contributor to having startups there. And more of a, like when you're doing your research, do you find that a lot of people have failed multiple times before in Silicon Valley? And
Yeah. I've been researching why Silicon Valley is what it is. I mean, in fact, what I do is I use my writing as a sounding board. Because when I publish academic papers, last year I only published one paper in the last year because I got too bored of publishing all these academic papers because you can't be controversial in them. But when I write for TechCrunch and Businessweek, you can be very controversial. With Businessweek, you've got to be correct and proper, and you have to go through 3 levels of editors. With TechCrunch, basically, it's from me to 4.5 million RSS feeds, and no one censors me. Right? So what I do is that I just fearlessly put my ideas out there. So worst case, I'll be wrong, and I'll get attacked. Big deal. Right? So I've written a series of articles about topics like this thing. Now, the first one I wrote was on Silicon Valley versus 128. I'm working with Annalise Saxion, who's the dean of the iSchool at Berkeley. She wrote a book called Regional Advantage, in which she looked at Route 128 versus Silicon Valley. How many of you know what Route 128 is? I'm surprised, I'm impressed. Maybe it's because you're on the East Coast. When I ask my Berkeley students or my Duke students that, no one has a clue what Route 128 is. 128 is the tech corridor in Boston, right? Now, 20 or 30 years ago, you would not say Silicon Valley without saying 128 in the same breath. In fact, it would be Route 128 Silicon Valley was the pecking order of things. Now, Boston isn't even regarded as a serious tech center. If anything, New York is the next in line. The difference between the two was the culture of informality and risk-taking. That was the key two differences between the two. That in Silicon Valley, there are no secrets. You go out, you go to any Pete's Coffee House, Starbucks there, and you basically exchange ideas openly with other people. The other thing is that you're fearless about failure. This is one thing which really surprised me when I moved to Silicon Valley a year ago, because I started meeting entrepreneurs, going to parties. You go there, say, hi, I'm Vivek Wadhwa, and then you say, what do you do? Oh, I run this company. And then the second thing out of their mouth is, before that I ran this company, which all of which failed. And after like the 15th time you hear this, You wonder what's going on here. I mean, there's a bunch of losers that you're dealing with here. Why does everyone keep showing off about their failures? What I realized is that in Silicon Valley, failure is a badge of honor. That failure is regarded as a step to success. That the more you fail, the more likely you are to finally succeed, because that's the way it goes. R&D and technology, especially in the tech world, it's all about experimentation. What happens is that you're building new technologies every year, every 2 years, which challenge everything before them. Okay, especially with the internet and social media and so on. So you're coming up with new ways of doing things, which require new business models, and it's all experimentation. And experimentation, you do an experiment, you have to fail a few times before you finally succeed. I mean, ask any scientist that. Okay, you go to the lab and you try different things out, and you fail until you finally get it right. That's the way it goes in the tech world. That you have to, iterate through and fail a number of times, and you can shortcut that by learning from others. So this is why management teams are very important. This is why when we asked successful entrepreneurs what made them successful, it was about experience, which has to do with learning from failure. It has to do with management teams, which means you bring experience in about failure, and then failure itself, that they learned. As if you took out the, in the raw, if you balance the data, what we found was that successful entrepreneurs value their failures more highly than they value their successes, because you learn from that. So now you talk about different regions. This is what happened. Let me talk about Japan. How much time do we have, by the way, Tom? I mean,
5:30.
Oh, great. Then I can get into depth. All right. So let's talk about Japan, because I went to Japan at the invitation of the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. There was the Deputy Prime Minister of Japan was holding some major event in Okinawa, and they wanted to get a bunch of academics from all over the world to come and bless it and say, "Ooh, wow, you're doing a great job," So they invited me over, and I warned them. Sidney Brenner apparently is a Nobel Prize winner. He was the original founder of OIST. I warned them in an email saying, "Look, here are my previous articles about it. I'm going to be pretty negative. I don't believe in clusters. I think these are brain-dead policies, and I'm not a fan of government. I don't believe governments can create innovation." So they said, "Fine, we're ready for you." Right? So I went there with that understanding, and when I went there. They had a bunch of government bureaucrats presenting their plans. For example, Japan has spent, I don't know the exact numbers, but in the $10 to $20 billion range over the past 2 or 3 decades in trying to build innovation. So they built all these science parks all across. Just like they they embraced Deming back in the 60s, they did the same with Michael Porter and his series of clusters. They basically put him on a pedestal and started implementing his book to the letter. Except, I think Porter's original theories made sense, that he observed how clusters work and he wrote a book about it. But then he went from that to prescribing that, hey, just because this is the way these clusters work, if you do these things, you'll now have a magical cluster. So regions like Japan started copying his book and his prescriptions, and they've all failed. Every single experiment by every single government in the world has failed. We've probably blown $100 billion and $1 trillion worth of potential economic activity because of the brain-dead prescriptions that people have been following blindly. The Japanese did the same, and one after the other, every one of their clusters failed. Okay. So here was the head of one of the clusters talking the morning I got there about why it failed. He went on about he joined there 3 years ago. And he said, I put this task force together. I did this. The problem is that the government wasn't controlling the academic. It wasn't telling the academics what to research. Then it wasn't telling the entrepreneurs what to develop. We've now hired 133 people. These are approximate numbers. So many people who are now going to be interfacing between academia and industry, and we put these people in, and we're going to control this more. His entire prescription was that to fix the entire problem of Japanese competitiveness, they're going to have more bureaucrats telling entrepreneurs what to do. I sort of sat there thinking, my God, what's going on? It's the twilight zone. And then later on in the discussions I was dealing with the Okinawa people, they were talking about how because of OIST, which is a magnificent, I think OIST is an amazing university, but they put the world-class faculty, world-class infrastructure, wonderful. If I was an academic, I'd love to live there. On the beach in Okinawa, great salaries, wonderful place to be for academics. However, they think that just because they built this great university, they're now going to get innovation out of it. So I started looking, I asked them, tell me how many engineers and scientists you graduate in the session that I with someone looked up. what they said, well, we graduate 20,000 people. We think 10% of them are engineers and scientists, so 2,000. Okay, of the last 30 years, how many of them have stayed in the local region? Which virtually all of them have left. So there's no base to work from. And then I started talking about culture of entrepreneurship there. They had like one entrepreneur there who was the Okinawa entrepreneur. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but then we started talking about the culture of risk-taking. Well, what happens when your company fails? I started speaking to venture capitalists and people from all over Japan. The consensus was that if you fail, you're an outcast in society over there. That there are some exceptions here, but by and large, you also have, on the extreme, you commit suicide when your business fails in Japan. So at the conclusion, I said, you guys are smoking something. If you think you're going to build innovation here, you have no hope in hell. And I said this very loudly and clearly in the presentations over there so that they heard it. And then no one listened to me. So I came back and I wrote 2 articles about it. One was Okinawa's doomed innovation experiment. The other one was about Japan and failure. And to my surprise, virtually everyone has agreed with everything I've said, especially the Japanese. The Japanese disagreed with some minor points because I had misquoted some data there about bankruptcy laws. I was wrong on that. But in essence, everything I wrote was correct. And the Wall Street Journal actually did publish a Japanese version of my article also. And the journalist told me that she's been getting email after email congratulating her for writing this article. So I created a firestorm by going and observing this.
So what's the difference in bankruptcy laws? Is it dischargeable?
I'm still not clear about it, but essentially you're liable for it. For 30 years, all the debts that you incur. What happens is if you raise venture capital in Japan, as in Europe, as in many other countries in the world, you have to basically sign your life away, that you're personally liable for all the debts incurred by your company. So if a company sinks, you're dead meat. Now maybe you can declare bankruptcy, but it's not easy. So technically you can declare bankruptcy, but in effect, no one wants to do it because you're a social outcast. And so what they do is that if your company is not doing well, you put it on life support. You keep putting your life savings into it. You make it work at all costs. You delay the demise of the company by as long as you can because you're going to look bad. You don't tell people how bad things are. And failure is not tolerated in Japanese society. But it's not that different in parts of American society. It's not that different. In Europe is equally bad as well.
Germany?
Germany is horrible in that area. I mean, I've spoken to many Germans about it. And failure is not looked, failure is condemned by society.
And the bankruptcy laws don't allow discharge.
Well, this is what the dispute, that's what I had read. I had read 2 books on which said that some Germans disagreed with me. I don't have my facts straight on that. But my belief was that the bankruptcy laws don't allow you to, get this debt off your back. But in any case, the reason why Silicon Valley is what it is because it welcomes the experimentation and the failure. Other regions in America don't do it, other regions across the world don't do it. And this is probably the number one benefit that Silicon Valley has is these losers who go around boasting about their failures. Question?
You pulled down your university R&D slide really quickly. I wanted to follow up on it a little bit. I don't think I heard you say that it's not wise to fund R&D, but rather that it's not being commercialized.
Yes.
If that's the case, again, what would the factors be in more effectively commercializing, and who would you point to as doing it especially well here or abroad?
Right. The reason why I bring that up is, I think basic research is very important. A lot of major innovations have come from basic research, so it's really important. And universities are really important. They create knowledge. They improve the society and all the good things about it, right? But it's when you start talking about universities being the key to competitiveness, and to say that if you gave the universities another $10 billion, we would have more R&D and more companies being started. That's false. Okay. Here's why. Because if you think about it, what does a professor get what's the incentive mechanism for professors to get tenure? They want lifelong employment and not have to worry about their jobs. Okay. How do you get that? By publishing papers. And what happens when you publish a paper? You put out to the general world, which means you don't file a patent on it because patents and papers are not compatible. You don't get incented to commercialize the technology because it looks bad. Your peer groups feel jealous of you, and therefore, the entire system is rigged against commercializing technology. It goes against the academic principles to be dealing with private industry. You don't let private industry come and tell you what to research or what to develop. So what academics do is that they'll find niches to research which are very safe for them, where they can publish all these papers with complex calculus, which other